Welcome to Wire Guild. This tutorial is an adjustable ring that's made with square wire, and you can make it with a very small stone without having to use any pre-made settings or beads or anything like that. This is the ring we're going to make. It's really quite sweet. We use 21 gauge square wire and 18 gauge half round wire, and I've used a 4mm gemstone, but you could probably get away with a 3 or a 3.5. Or even a 5. As you can see, this is the little ring we're going to be making. Very sweet, very neat, look nice stacked with different rings. So I've got myself 4 lengths of square wire, 21 gauge square wire. There's no point in me telling you this in mil because they don't make it in the UK, so it'll be in gauge for American. And I've just flattened those down and got them nice and straight. You want the wires to lay side by side, and I've got here just a scrap of wire. It's just something that's been on the workbench. It's nothing important because it's only a temporary binding that I'm going to put on just to hold these 4 wires together. Just wrap that round and squash it down. It's like having an extra pair of hands. You could use sticky tape, you could use a little clamp. I tend to use scraps of wire. I'm going to cut myself 2 lengths of 18 gauge half hard, half round. These are probably just over an inch long. They don't need to be very long, you'll see why in a moment. The actual wire itself I've got is probably about 4 or 5 inches long, really, because there were offcuts that I had laying around, so I've used them. With my binder on at the halfway point, I've just separated the 2 wires, and I'm going to pop this bead reamer in the middle. Anything that's little and round will do. And then I'm going to bend the wires around, sorry, let me get my hands in shut. Bend the wires around that. So you can see the little tiny hole there. Then using some normal pliers, I'm going to straighten that wire up that way. And that wire that way. When working out how much length you want, if you put a piece of spare wire around a mandrel and give yourself, say, twice that length, you know, when you go to the right size, that's probably about good. But I tend to use up spare bits and pieces I have lying around. So that little hole now, I've brought the wires back in again so they're straight. We'll just sit my little gemstone in there without it falling through, which is what I want. So I'm going to take, remember those 2 lengths that we cut from half round? With flat face downwards and me holding the wires together with my thumb, I'm just going to pop them down so they're facing flat side down and going up the middle of those 4 wires that I've just bound. So the crossing over, I'm going to get some more half round, put a nice sharp bend in it so it's ready to weave, and just straighten those wires up. They don't want to stay straight. They can be fiddly, but it will get there. And then I'm going to wrap over the top of those 2 half round wires and the 4 square wires. So I'm binding everything in place and I'm squeezing that down with my pliers. Around again and squeeze it down. Let's have a look. Now I can go back to the other side. Just tighten up that first wrap because those first wraps are always loose. And go around again. You could probably get away with 4 wraps if you wanted just a few. I'm doing a couple more because I actually like the way it looks on top of the ring. Now I'm going to lift, let's just bring that over that side. We want that to go about up to the point where that circle in the middle starts. Can you see just there? So that's tucked right up as close as it'll go, and I'll squash that down. Now those 2 half round wires that we put on the top, I'm going to lift up and out of the way. I'm going to slide, I'm going to try and slide off. Oh, there it goes. There goes my temporary binder. I think it just flew off out the window somewhere. Right, so I can now get to, sorry, I'm trying to get a good way around so you can actually see it in the camera. So I'm going to put my stone the pointed bit, the little, no, downwards, flat face across the top, it's going into the hole. And then I'm going to bring one of the half round, two of the half round wires over the top of the stone. If you put your thumb from your non-dominant hand on, it will hold everything in place. I'm just squeezing that down. I'm trying to, can you see inside? Using my pliers, I'm going to squeeze the half round wire down so it's holding everything together and it's as tight as I can get it. Sorry, I'm moving off to one side. It is still in camera shot though. Let me just, there we go. Now I'm going to take the half round wire down the side of the stone at the back. Let me bring that back into the middle of shot. And I'm going to wrap that now around. I'm just tightening up the other side so that it doesn't slip, and around. I've got too much things on my desk today, that's what's wrong. Now then, let's go. Tighten down. And around. And around. And I can just keep, you can just see the bottom there. You can see how I've gone to the side of the stone when I brought the half round wire to the other side of the stone. And making sure that my square wires are still straight and that they're not crossing over. If they try to cross over, like mine are doing, you can undo the binding wire. That one's been naughty. Straighten it with my pliers. The reason I use the pliers is fingers tend to be a little bit soft and a bit squishy, so if you've got a wire that's crossed and you squeeze it with your fingers, the chances are you're not going to straighten it. You do it with your pliers, and there's no give in pliers, so it will straighten. So now I'm just going to bind the other side to match my first side. Don't forget to tighten it down with your pliers occasionally. I'm just counting how many wraps I got round the first side so that I match. There's nothing worse than having one number on one side and then another on the other. And then I'm going to trim off at the back and press the end down. There we go. Our stone is in, but you can't really see it very well because of course you've got these two half round wires going straight over the top. However, I'll show you what we do. Using your pliers, you can get hold of one of the wires, support the plier underneath where the stone is resting on that square wire, and just gradually, little tiny movements, squeeze, and the wire will gradually move to the side of the stone. You don't want it to drop off the stone, because if it comes all around and comes off, nothing's going to hold your stone in place. So I'm just straightening up and just teasing. You can hear the click as I slip off and the pliers. Let's have a look. Can I see my stone yet? Let's just get rid of that end bit. It's catching my finger each time I work, so we'll just get that out of the way. Let's just press that down. Now then, if I semi-curve that the way a ring's going to be, I need to get rid of these two pieces here because they're not fastened down. So I'm trimming those off as close as I can possibly get to the binding, and then I flatten them down with pliers. When I get towards the end, what I'll do is I'll just check if there's any sharp bits, and if there are, I'll just go over that either with a little polishing wheel, slightly abrasive one, which will take it off, or a file, just that little bit there, and just file it off. I get my ring manger out. I'm going to pop this. This is the size that I want my ring, and I'm going to go all the way around. You may find that you need to use a small hammer, a little, to actually tap this around. There we go. That's the size I want. Because the wire is fairly stiff, it doesn't spring back too much. Now I'm just grabbing that with the pliers. Sorry, let me just get that back. into shot for you so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to get some more binding wire, some more 18 gauge, and I've bent that in half, and I'm just going to go around. Now this is just shy of where the wires would cross over. If it makes it easier, when you actually cross those wires over on your ring mandrel, you can mark it with a Sharpie pen so you know that the line that you're going to work just inside of is there and marked up. As I sell these, it doesn't really matter to me roughly what size they are, so I tend to just work generally. So I'm just wrapping the wire around, and it's going to hold those 4 square wires together. I'm going to trim off the end and tuck that bit in and flatten down. There we go. Go around again. Always making sure that the flat side of the half round wire is on the inside. It's the bit that's going against the metal. There is most surface area on the flat side. So if that goes on the inside, you've got a better grip to bind everything. So let's just flatten that down. Okay. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. If you wanted, and you wanted to be exactly precise about this, you can get a piece of wire. You can find out where your finger size is on the ring mandrel. I'm just working out roughly where the binding is by measuring it against the other wire, but you could do it with a ruler. So you could get a piece of wire, you could wrap it around your mandrel, work out what size you were and exactly how many millimeters of wire you needed to make a ring to fit you. I would then suggest that you need at least half as much again, if not double. Then you would have your piece of wire with your exact length. You'd have your 4 pieces of square wire to create your ring, and you could start working and doing your binding. With an adjustable ring, they never actually touch on the back of your finger. So what you're working on is a ring that's actually going to be approximately 1/8 of an inch littler than your ring would need to be. And that's where your bindings go up to. Now I'm nearly finished binding the other side. Press that down. Trim off and wrap around. There we go. Now, this wire. Obviously it has to be cut off. If I cut off right at the end, it's not good. So I'm cutting off about the length of the binding that we've got, if not a tad longer. And I'm just doing it by eye. Again, if you want to measure it, you want to go a little bit longer than your bindings. There we go. Grip the very, very edge with my pliers, not so that it pokes through the pliers, just the very edge, and bend down. You see that little tiny bend there? Then when I take that and I bend it, the whole thing will bend over the binding, and those wires that are bent in will tuck inwards. This is a ring. You can't do with sharp, rough edges on the inside of a ring. But as long as you do that bending first, you'll find that there's nothing there to dig in. So grip the end, bend in. That little tuck in. Take at the bottom of the binding and bend it up. There we go. Now make sure all those wires are tucked in and pressed down and neat. There we go, just go that way a little bit. Then back onto the mandrel and press around. As I say, you may find at this point that you need to hammer it Now, I don't know what I've done with my hammer at the moment. Oh, I've got little two nicky bits there. Let me just get those off. These are remainders from the wire that goes over the stone. So I'll just take those off now. So I'm just looking for my file. I usually have a little file kicking around somewhere here. Yeah, I'm not sure what I've done with it exactly. However, if you did have one and you needed it, you could just put a little file across there and just give it a rub. Or if you had a Dremel, you could do something like that and just file the edges off. So I'm just doing the final shaping up. And I've gone on to a much higher part of the mandrel than I would normally actually use for the ring because it's not touching, just to get it rounded. Now let's see how that fits. Yeah, that goes on great. You got a little gap at the back. I think I just want to have another little go. And you see I can wear it on different fingers. That's the great thing about an adjustable ring. I think I want just a little bit more stone to show. If you use round nose pliers this time, you can sort of get those in at the back of that wire, and I'm just squeezing gently. Again, I don't want to pull too hard because you don't want to pull it off the stone. If you do pull it off the stone, you're going to have to start and take the wire out, take your bindings off and start all over again. But there we go, I've got one there in garnet and I've got one there in amethyst. I'm just going to shape that a bit more. This is really because I didn't hammer it. If I'd have hammered it around the mandrel, I wouldn't have had this problem, but just fiddle with that edge there. I don't like to fiddle with things, I'm terrible. Let's just squeeze that into place. There, that's better. So like I say, you can wear them on their own or stack them up. It's entirely up to you. I've really enjoyed making this one. I can't wait to see what you've made. Thank you very much for watching. Happy wrapping!